formed through the Beaverton Police Department. I guess I'm on, and I'm filling in for Ann Morrill. If you were expecting Ann Morrill, she has been delayed in traffic. My name is Bruce Buffington, and I am the outgoing president and founder of Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. Northwest Bicycle Safety Council focuses on safety in the community. We have community outreach, community partners, and we hope that with our educational outreach program with our partners, that our riders and their young people have a shared experience that helps make them better riders by the time they turn their bicycles in for a car. Also, I'd like to thank our capable crew, which I'm generally a part of, and Northwest Bicycle Safety Council for sponsoring this show. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest, Sergeant Kevin McDonald, who's from the Beaverton Police Department. And you were in the traffic division, but I don't know where you're at now, but we're going to discuss that. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for welcoming me back to the show.
So let's start with a little information about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in this area, in Beaverton, and I will tell you about my cycling career. So an avid cyclist as a kid, and really when I got into high school, the mountain bike craze kind of caught my eye a little bit. So I was really into the off-road riding, and I know mountain bike technology kind of changed. I looked back at my older bike, and the components on it certainly are dated. But continued cycling even as an adult, and that also coupled with my law enforcement career. When I was 16, I was hired as a police cadet here in the city of Beaverton, and had the unique opportunity to ride as a mountain bike police cadet, and we patrolled parks here in the Beaverton city limits. And so really at that time, mountain biking and law enforcement was kind of a new thing, although really historically it had been around for a long time, but it was kind of a thing at that time. And I was able to see the unique perspective of being in law enforcement on the bike and seeing crime happen.
So let me ask you, so what brought you to Beaverton?
So I grew up.
Where did you come from to Beaverton?
Yeah, so I grew up in this area, and the agency, back when I was younger, I had a friend in the cadet program at the time, and really I had already had an interest in law enforcement, and hearing his experiences with the department, I'm like, hey, that sounds interesting. I'd like to do that. Once I was hired by the Beaverton Police Department, I really started to admire the professionalism of the agency and the compassion that the officers had for the community that they serve. But I also noticed the community support that the department had as well, so it was kind of reciprocal. But that was very appealing to me.
How does the cadet program work, or did it work at that time?
So at that time it was for youth 16 to 20 years old, and it was basically a volunteer program where they could learn about law enforcement and learn about law enforcement training. And really it was an opportunity, it's much like an Explorer program. It was an opportunity to learn about the career at a young age and see if that's a career that was, that you would want to do. For me, I definitely decided that was what I wanted to do for a career, and 20 some odd years later, here I am talking with you.
Well, and it's been really nice talking to you, because you've been on the show. You've helped enlighten a lot of our viewers as to how this bicycling worked, and as opposed to versus law enforcement. But one of the things Ann wanted to have me ask you was the community support. Now, I do know, I can't plead ignorance on this. I know that when you were a cadet, and then when you became a police officer, that you were supported by the Beaverton Optimist Club and other civic organizations, which Beaverton Optimist Club was also part of what brought Northwest Bicycle Safety council into existence, so I can't plead total ignorance. And so we started through the Beaverton Police Department bike program as the Beaverton Bike Safety Committee, and then later changed our names to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. And you were there in those beginnings, so from the cadet program, and when you started with the police department, then you got to see the citizens' involvement, you saw community involvement and civic organization involvement. How did that inspire you or help you be encouraged?
Yeah, I think that's just another example of our commitment with our community and in coming together. You know, bicycle safety has always been of interest to me. I've always been drawn to traffic in traffic safety, and really those relationships that we've had with Northwest Bicycle Safety Council throughout my career, it's been a constant. We've done bike safety fairs together, and so as I progressed through my career, I worked the street for about 7 years, and then I had an opportunity to become a mountain bike officer. And when that opportunity came open, I think that's where really you and I probably connected even more, because we had events together. What I found with doing police work on a mountain bike is that it's a completely unique experience from any other position in law enforcement. You're able to engage with the community, you're approachable, and you're able to see things that you may not normally see when you're in a car.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions about that, what you get to see. You don't just go out and arrest people. My understanding is, I mean, you can give us an idea of how much is involved, but including what some of the public may not know is that you may console people, counsel someone in crisis. I mean, being in the mountain bike unit and being out where you're up close and personal with the community, can you kind of give us an idea of what that's like?
Sure. I would say it's probably one of the more fulfilling experiences that I've had in my career, where you can be out in the community, you can talk with people, they will tell you that what's going on in their neighborhood, you're accessible, and the ability to move around quickly, to get to areas that may not be patrolled, you know, by a car, and to be in parks, to be in bike trails. There's also another component of being able to educate the community about bike safety. That's a whole nother aspect of the actual police work part of it, where you're out maybe arresting people or trying to deter crime. The educational component, and that's from kids all the way to adults. And so seeing that and seeing the benefits of those efforts is very rewarding to me.
Well, you mentioned kids to adults, and so how should adults make themselves aware of the laws, of rules of the road, and how they should behave on the road when they're riding their bicycle, and to pass those kinds of responsibilities on to the kids at their level of understanding?
Sure. So bicycle safety as it relates to riding in traffic is exactly like operating a vehicle. So if you're an adult and you already have a driver's license, you're already there for the most part. But when you translate that to kids, that's a little bit harder to do. I'm a parent, so I've got 3 kids of my own, and I know that it's been an interesting road to teach them about bicycle safety. So not only am I learning from a parent perspective, but I also see it from a law enforcement perspective too. And really with the kids, you're teaching them about how it is to operate a vehicle in some aspects, and having the appropriate safety gear is that starting point, the helmet.
So we will cover the helmet factor shortly, but there have been some questions about how a rider should behave and what they should know when they're out there, whether they're first out on a bicycle or they've been riding for many years. Can we kind of look over some basic things for people to start with, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 important laws cyclists should know for their own safety and
Sure.
for the safety of others.
So, looking at it from the kid perspective first, as you're teaching your children how to ride, pick areas that are safe to learn. And really, you need to gauge the age of your child and kind of know your child's capabilities to make sound judgments in traffic, especially. For adults, it's different. Adults, they should hopefully have a good understanding of most of the motor vehicle laws. Most adults have a license, and if they don't, they should at least be aware of the laws that pertain to cyclists when they're riding. Some of the things that I've seen, and we didn't talk about this, but I was assigned to our traffic division for about 8 years. I also did traffic reconstruction, so I had the opportunity to go to some fairly bad crashes, which included cyclists. And so the laws that I have seen over the years are the traffic control devices and cyclists not obeying those, lane usage issues, no lights on the bike at night, visibility issues. And as a bike rider, a lot of times it pays to be a defensive bike rider in traffic because you don't know when that car is going to turn in front of you. And I've seen those crashes. And unfortunately, when it's a car versus a cyclist, the cyclist ends up getting injured.
Yes, a lot of negative repercussions if you
Yes.
don't know the laws. Maybe some specific laws, things that you must do or shall do or need to do in order to keep yourself safe as far as you're moving about town in traffic.
Sure. So traffic control devices, stop signs, you have to stop, come to a complete stop.
Now, you mean to tell me that bicyclists have to stop at all stop signs?
They do.
And red lights?
No, red lights is a little bit different.
Okay, there's something else came
so
up
I think
about
we're
that
headed
for
a
this
different
year.
direction.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I'll reference the Oregon state law. It's ORS 811-360.
Right.
And it's a provision that was essentially designed for cyclists and motorcyclists. What was happening was cyclists and motorcyclists would come up to intersections that the signal would not trip the light, the motorcycle or cyclist would not trip the light, so therefore they couldn't get a green light to proceed. So the law changed, and it allows for the cyclist to remain at the intersection for a complete light cycle and then proceed through the intersection with caution. And I know in checking with other agencies in our area, I don't know of any crashes that have occurred because someone was proceeding through, but I do recommend using extreme caution.
Yes.
And if possible, if there is another way around the intersection, to choose that safe option as well.
I asked that question because when I lead bike rides for the Portland Wheelman Touring Club, those are the kind of things we have to keep up with, is what the current laws are, and the red light issue, to give people an understanding of how that actually works. And so I'm glad that you were able to clarify that. And that's part of what's going to keep us safe, is using good judgment and caution.
It is. One of the things that we always preach in our bike training for law enforcement officers is be seen and be predictable. And we also say expect the unexpected, being seen is one of those things that I think is very important for your cyclist who commutes every day, especially lighting, clothing. I'm a very big advocate of using lighting in the daytime. LED technology is amazing right now.
It is.
It's inexpensive, and having a light on your bike on a bright sunny day actually can pay off. Intersections are always a point of concern as a cyclist, whether it's a stop sign, whether it's a traffic signal. You want to use that caution to come before you come through that intersection. And having those extra measures is a small insurance policy for a little bit of safety.
I know one of our bike patrol officers, Mark Barrowcliff, used to have a saying that ride like you're invisible.
Right,
And I
like
think
yes.
that's really kind of spells it out, doesn't it?
That is true. I can think of many experiences, both personally and professionally, where motorists didn't see you, and you have to really make sure you have that eye contact with the motorist as you're coming up to an intersection. A lot of the crashes I've seen over the years have actually been in relation to driveways and bike lane access. So if you know you're coming up into a busy parking lot area where people are turning in and out and you're the cyclist coming through there, really use that extra caution to make sure that people see you coming up there.
Right. Well, that brings us to some other questions that sometimes the community or cyclists have is riding in the bike lane. And when can you not ride in it versus having it required that you ride in a bike lane when there's one present? Can you kind of give us just some scenarios on that?
Sure. So the default would be to ride in the bike lane if it's there for you. Certainly some roadways don't have that available, so then you would have to ride to the right side of the road. But if you need to make a left turn, for example, you're going to have to get out of that bike lane to get into the appropriate lane. And that's just where you need to make sure you're taking the lane, signaling appropriately, and making sure you can get over safely into that left turn pocket or other lane that you need to get to. But the requirement is that you utilize bike lane when it is there.
And what about those people who don't feel comfortable riding on the road and want to jump on the sidewalk? Is there any kind of provision for those people?
Some cities do have ordinances on that, but as far as the state law goes, as long as you aren't riding exceptionally fast, you're okay to do that. But what I would caution is that, especially when you get into having kids ride on the sidewalk, neighborhood areas where cars are backing out, there's that whole visual difference where kids can't always see, and drivers certainly, if they're backing out of their driveway, may not be able to see a child that's sitting lower on a bike. And so to me, there are much more hazards in actually using the sidewalk. And I think when you have children involved, parental supervision is certainly a good idea. If it's a neighborhood that you live in and you're comfortable with it and there isn't a lot of in and out traffic, but I think it's best judgment on the parent's part.
So I think the view that we have when we're leading bike rides is if you're riding on the road, you act like a motor vehicle, act like a vehicle. If you're riding on the sidewalk, act like a pedestrian. But you can go to Northwest Bicycle Safety Council's website, which will show on the screen, and go under some of our resources, and you'll find Pedal Power. It's a book put out by the BTA and the attorney. I'm trying to think of his name right now. But anyway, you can go in there and it has all of the cities and what the ordinances are or prohibitions are for riding on the sidewalk. And it's very interesting to at least look up those places before you go riding in those areas. And a good example is in Vernonia, is stamped on the sidewalk that the sidewalk is for pedestrians. But if you're going to have your bicycle on a sidewalk, you have to become a pedestrian, and that means what? Walk your bike?
I would think so, yes.
We talked about all of the things that, not all of them, but enough things that people could prepare themselves by seeking the information, knowing what the laws and rules are. What about common sense? We're talking about using some good common sense here as a bicyclist?
There is, and you made me think of something that we've kind of talked about in the traffic reconstruction world, and that's the lug nut rule. And if it has more lug nuts than you do, be careful.
Yeah.
And some of the viewers may have heard that term before, but there's some truth to that. And really being prepared, being aware of your surroundings as a cyclist when you're riding, lighting conditions, weather conditions, and really just awareness and common sense. Again, I've mentioned it, but intersections are always the point of where we see more crashes, even with motor vehicles, but cyclists more so. The right turn that someone makes in front of you and you're in the bike lane, the person pulling out doesn't see you. So really use caution. We're in the winter months right now, and if you commute, you want to have that clothing. You want to take the extra time to make sure that you're riding safe to get to work, get home, and having that common sense of being visible and predictable. Be seen and be predictable.
That's right. Also, you can find on our website under Pedal Power, Ray Thomas has classes. He's a bicycle attorney. He has classes all throughout the local communities, and you can attend one of those. You can go on the BTA website and get his schedule, because a lot of those are done in conjunction with the BTA. He also has a booklet that's put out that's a very good reference tool that we use at the Portland Wheelman, and it really helps. And part of that, other than riding on the road, we have the helmet law to help keep us safe. So can you tell us a little bit about that law and who's impacted by it?
Sure. Now, adults are not required to have the helmet, but certainly children 16 and under are. Again, I think most parents are pretty good about getting their kids to wear helmets. I can think of my own experiences as a parent. My youngest it's been fun to watch her be very vigilant about wearing that, and she'll remind her older siblings if they're not wearing theirs, and she'll wear her helmet even in the car sometimes. So, which is very endearing. But really, it's parents being involved to protect their kids. Head injuries from a bike crash, I've seen that happen over the years, and that is a bad situation. It's a bad situation for adults. I've seen it where adults didn't have a helmet on, and unfortunately they lost their life, and that was because of the head injury. In my crash reconstruction life of investigations, pedestrian crashes and bicycle crashes are often very similar in that when a person does crash or fall, the impact to the ground is usually what causes the severe head injury to them, as opposed to actually being physically hit by the vehicle. So having helmet is, you start that at a young age, and hopefully by the time they're high school, college, adults, wearing a helmet is just how it is. It is for me.
Yes, and I happen to know that police officers receive training in that regard. And you were part of the training team for police mountain bike?
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'll talk about that. So the riding a mountain bike as a police officer, again, is a unique experience, but it isn't that we just go purchase a bike and a helmet and say, here you go. There has to be some training involved in that, and really it has a lot of different components, but most people, by the time they're adult, already know how to ride a bike, hopefully. And so they have that balance piece. But we really focus on teaching small maneuvers on the bike, skill building, tight cornering, because sometimes as law enforcement, we have to ride in crowded areas, and we need to have the ability to balance on the bike. We also need to learn how to crash. Injuries happen when you crash, and doing it properly can make the difference. So we make the officers learn how to crash, and we'll teach them how to do it, and no one gets hurt. It's very intimidating, myself included, to physically crash yourself, but you learn that actually makes sense if you do it correctly. We also take the officers on extended rides in traffic to get them familiar with maneuvering as a group in traffic, because we'll ride in pairs, we'll ride in fours, and understanding that dynamic of working in traffic, doing police work. From there, we often go on an off-road ride. Off-road riding is a skill building opportunity for officers to learn the braking systems and learn that maybe too much front brake isn't always a good thing. I've seen that happen a few times. So those things help the officers be prepared. We also add the component of use of force. We have to be prepared to engage in a situation. We will do defensive tactics with the bike. We will do firearms training with the bike. So those are all pieces that by the end of the week, most officers who go through the course are pretty tired, probably instructors included, but it truly is valuable training that prepares officers when they do take the assignment as a mountain bike officer, that they're ready to use that tool that we have effectively.
And they're better informed, so they're abiding by the same rules of the road that the community should be.
Absolutely.
And that's also to help keep themselves safe.
Yes.
Well, we had another thing here that Ann had this question, and I thought it was very good because I don't think I would have thought of this one. She wants to know how the perception is of children who ride bicycles age out of a helmet in Oregon, because these laws are different throughout this. But all laws pertain to everyone, and it's ageless regardless of how old you are. You don't age out of the laws. Is that true in Oregon?
Yeah, with the exception of the helmet law, all the bicycle laws or vehicle code laws apply to cyclists. So you don't age out because you're a certain age. I think with younger cyclists, enforcement probably isn't as likely. In my career, I've never seen that, and that's that's one of those life lessons, and hopefully it's not a lesson that results in injury. But I think the bicycle for younger riders is a tool to learn about motor vehicle safety, and as they get older, they understand how cars and traffic work. So yeah, I mean, you don't age out of those laws.
So that brings us to this question of children get their first bikes or often get a new bike during Christmas, and they get it with their toys. But my understanding is that we don't describe a bicycle as a toy. How do you approach that for parents' level of understanding?
I grappled with that question because as a parent, my kids have received bicycles at Christmas time. And I see the bicycle as an opportunity to learn. It's a learning tool. And it's also something that offers recreation for them to go out and enjoy. I know when we talk about bike rides, they're very excited to go out and enjoy the freedom of the movement of the bicycle and being able to maneuver it, and really it builds confidence in their skills. Watching the kids learn how to obtain balance on the bike, and I guess that magical moment when they're like, yeah, I've got balance now, and that confidence builds as they learn how to ride. I think of my own situation as my kids get older. Riding in traffic is really one of those next stages where I'm at. We've done the bike trails off of the beaten path. We've stayed out of heavy traffic, and now we're learning how to manage the bike in traffic. So those experiences. So is it a toy? I guess it can be. When I draw on my own experience again, when I was younger, it was a toy to go ride on the trails and have fun. But I think it's where you apply the bicycle.
Okay. Well, we are out of time for this segment, and I thank you for coming on. We're supposed to be going to a video about now, and so we don't know if we're going to have the segment 2 with you and I on, or if Ann has made it through all that traffic by now. So let's watch the video.
Maybe you ride to school. Maybe you ride for fun. Either way, when you're on a bike, you want to get where you're going safely. To do that, you need to remember a few key things. Be visible, follow the rules of the road, and be predictable. Okay, that's it, we're done. Well, not done exactly. We might have a few more things to say. When we say be visible, what we mean is be easy to see. Drivers should be watching for you, and they are, but do your part. Make sure your bike is ready for riding, and that includes having working lights and reflectors. In the daytime, wear bright colors. At night, wear something reflective, either clothing or gear. And dress for safety. If you're wearing loose pants, for example, strap down the pant leg on the chain side of the bike, like this, so it won't get caught while you're riding. And wear a bike helmet when you ride. It may or may not be the law where you live, but it's always a good idea. Of course, part of the idea of wearing a helmet is not to put it to the test, not to have a wreck in the first place. And that's all about where you choose to ride and how you do it. Bikes are considered vehicles. So when you're riding a bike on the road, follow the same rules as car drivers do. Just like a driver, you need to look for and obey road signs and traffic signals. We're talking stop signs, yield signs, red lights, and so on. Keep to the right, but far enough from parked cars so you don't get clipped by a door that opens suddenly. Usually that's at least 3 feet. But what happens when you don't have 3 feet? When the lane narrows, for example. That's when you need to take the lane. Taking the lane means that you move into the center of the lane, just like a car. You should do this when the lane narrows or when you're coming up to an intersection or some other kind of turn. In these situations, the center of the lane is usually the best place to be. When it's time to change lanes, you should look for traffic, signal, and then move one lane at a time. Traffic will always be changing, so it's important to look and signal each time you want to change lanes. Anytime you're uncomfortable with a traffic situation, you have choices. You can get off the bike and walk on the sidewalk. You can choose a different route, one that has bike lanes or slower traffic. Or you can use a combination of bike and transit. But no matter where you're riding, a road or a trail, always watch out for people walking. Move out of their way and let them know when you're about to pass them on the left.
On your left.
If there's one thing drivers count on, it's predictability. So one of the best ways to be safe is to be predictable. For example, use hand signals before you turn or stop. Ride in the same direction the cars are going, with the flow of traffic, not against it. And don't assume that drivers will see you just because you see them. You already know this part, but we're gonna say it anyway. Put your phone away while you're riding. You don't want to be talking or texting because you need to be alert and paying attention to what you're doing. Same goes for earbuds or headphones. You need to hear what's going on around you, so leave them in your bag for later. Keep both hands on the handlebars unless you're signaling, and keep your eyes open for hazards, things like wet roads, gravel, debris, anything that can mess with your ride. As we said up front, it really comes down to 3 things. Be visible, be predictable, and follow the same rules as a car. Make sure that drivers can see you, that you let them know what you're about to do, and that you're following the rules of the road. That's it. Have a good ride.
Well, welcome back to Psychology Today. That was a great video and hopefully reinforced some of the information shared by Sergeant McDonald from the Beaverton Police. Gave you some visuals about things that he spoke about. And I want to thank Bruce Buffington for being our host for the first half of the show. We're back now with Maria Schur, and she is with Isla Bikes, and we're going to talk about bike fitting, and particularly with the idea that the holidays, and oftentimes we get children a new bike for Christmas, and how to make sure that that bike is going to be a great fit for your child. So thank you, Maria, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I always like to start with our guests giving a little history about themselves so we know a little bit about you.
Well, sure. I moved to Portland, Oregon about 15 years ago. I answered the siren call of Bike Mecca. Moved here from San Francisco, where I had been a messenger for the last couple of years I lived there.
So, well, welcome to Portland quite some time ago.
Yes, thank you.
You know, there's a lot of similar themes amongst our guests getting that siren call, as you said. And so what about your cycling history? You said you were a messenger, a bike messenger.
Sure. Well, I could spend the entire show talking about my cycling history, but suffice it to say that I just enjoy all sorts of bike riding. So I had the honor of being in the first ever Critical Mass in San Francisco in fall of 1992, and that really opened up the idea of socializing on a bike and the idea of political empowerment from two wheels. And since then, I became a bike messenger. I'm also really passionate about recreational club riding and have done some randonneuring. Been delighted to do some bike packing and have ridden the Oregon Outback a couple of times. And then most recently, this year in July, I competed in a race called the Steens Mazama 1000, which was a self-supported 1,000-mile loop around Oregon, visiting the two highest roads and featuring 140 miles of gravel. So, you know, and I also just really enjoy the urban rides that Portland has to offer, like Pedalpalooza, and there's a Thursday night ride, which is very Critical Mass style that goes on, and there's not a kind of riding I don't like.
So I think we'll have to have you back as a guest just to talk about some of your adventures so that we can share in those too. So where are you currently employed?
I am happily employed at Isla Bikes. That's spelled like island at the beginning, kind of. And so Isla Bikes makes lightweight quality children's bicycles based in the UK, and then the second and only other location in the world is here in Portland, Oregon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Of course, Portland ranks that. So before we go to the business philosophy of Isla Bikes, I just wanted to point out that we do have a mannequin here, a live mannequin. This is Annika. This is one of my granddaughters, Annika Morrow, and she's going to help demonstrate the bike fitting here in a few minutes. So what is the philosophy of Isla Bikes then? Because it's kind of a unique bicycle business.
Sure. Our philosophy is that it's important to give children a quality cycling experience. This is the next generation of bicyclists. And if they get a good start on a nice lightweight bicycle that fits them correctly, they'll have fun with it and they'll keep moving up through the ranks and hopefully grow up to be adults that are interested in bicycling.
And we just talked about kind of leading into that, and we had Sergeant McDonald talking about bike safety with the kids, and I kind of wanted to talk about picking a bike for the child and how to purchase this, and like you're saying, to get a quality bike that the child is really going to enjoy riding. I know myself, years past, you kind of think of a theme bike, like, ooh, a princess bike or this bike, and the kid is going to love that when they receive it, but like you're saying, big picture, maybe not so much. So we're going to kind of delve into that.
Sure.
Because it might not be that quality ride.
Another thing I should mention about the business philosophy of Isla Bikes is that environmentalism is extremely important to the company, and our UK headquarters has started a project called the Imagine Project, where they're looking at a more circular business model which will involve a bike that will last forever, that will rent out to child after child, take back, refurbish, and on to the next child. That's called the Imagine Project.
Nice. That's really interesting. Well, let's start with talking about the bikes. So you brought 3 different bikes that we're going to talk about, and let's start with the youngest kiddos. What age do youngsters get on these bikes, and talk about how we might even have a toddler on a bicycle?
Sure. So we'll generally see kids at about age 2 are ready for 2 wheels. And so we have a balance bike. This bike has no drivetrain at all, no pedals, no crank, no chain. And the little bitty toddler, almost 2 years old, may just stand over it and just let it fall to the side and just play with it a bit, and they'll get more and more familiar with it, and soon they'll be sitting and walking quite swiftly. And before you know it, they're not walking anymore. Their feet are out to the sides and they're flying along. We have added a brake, which is actually a necessity on the bike, and you can YouTube there's all kinds of balance bike races where the kids will actually get onto closed course dirt berms where they'll go quite swiftly. So the idea behind this bike isn't just play for the kids, it's learning to balance on two wheels. So by the time they're ready to graduate from a balance bike, off they go, just like that. All they have to learn is pedaling from that point.
And I know when this little one was littler and we were looking for a first bike, the idea of balancing just did not resonate with me. And so you're saying that, in fact, the whole balancing thing, once they get balancing, pedaling is relatively easy to pick up, whereas the opposite is not so true. And then you're dealing with training wheels and getting those off eventually, and they don't want to let those off. So this is just a whole simpler stepping stone.
And getting humans at a very young age learning this kind of physical skill and muscle development, it ingrains it. It makes it much easier than a 5 or 6 or 8-year-old learning that for the first time. I learned to bike when I was 8 years old on an adult step-through frame. It's amazing that I ever even became a bicyclist. But this generation has this really great advantage of an early start to this kind of balance. And I, in fact, just last week taught a 2-year-old, maybe 2.5-year-old, to ride his first pedal bike, and it took 10 minutes. And, it was a very moving occasion, both for the child and their parent, and also me. But, one of life's milestones, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've got a little bit bigger bike, and this would be kind of the next step up probably then.
Yeah, so this is the NOC 14 Large. The 14, so named for the wheel size, where you have a 12-inch wheel on the balance bike, and we have a couple of 14-inch bikes. So there's one that's yet smaller than this, and that's the size that the 2.5-year-old was on last week. So we'll see maybe 3-year-olds on this. The age is just a rough guideline. It's really the size that matters.
Sure.
And so this bike has a fully enclosed chain guard. That's an important thing to look for when you're buying a bike, especially for age 4 and under, because there's all kinds of moving parts in here that little fingers can get hurt in. We've also equipped the bike with a coaster brake, and so this allows a child who maybe doesn't have the hand-eye coordination or the muscle development yet to squeeze the brake levers, gives them another way to stop.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And everything is kind of, it's not an adult bike shrunk down. It is a child's bike built from the ground up to accommodate a small person.
Exactly right. Every part of the bike is ergonomically sized for the particular rider who will be on it. So from the diameter of the handlebars, if you look at my hand, I can wrap all the way around, where a child hand on an adult handlebar will look like this.
Yeah.
That's not safe or comfortable for them. We've had these small brake levers made just for us, and they set them on a light trigger so that little hands can operate them safely. Really short cranks. And as you look up through our range, there's several bikes in the range, and the cranks each get longer and longer and longer, because you want that to be in proportion to the leg.
Sure.
And then also the Q factor, for you bike geeks who know what that means, has to do with the distance between the cranks.
Oh.
So if you were to just take a small adult bike and put a child on it, that's going to have a bottom bracket that's spread further apart. That's meant for an adult pelvis with legs pedaling this way. You put a child's pelvis on it, now they're pedaling this way. So we avoid that by having a correct Q factor on our bikes.
Good engineers.
Yes, very talented group in the UK.
So let's use our little model here and kind of go through step by step of what you do look for. And this pertains to adults as well as far as riding a bike. but
So
but
actually, we
particularly
fit
for
kids
children.
a little bit differently to our bikes than you would see an adult fit. Go ahead and swing a leg over, Annika. Thank you. And so the way Annika fits this bike, she's reaching the ground with the balls of both feet while sitting on the saddle. So this is the signature part of our fit. You can see she has just a slight bend in the torso, and she can reach the bars enough that she can easily grab the brake levers. Go ahead and demonstrate that. There you go. And even a slight bend in the elbow. And that slight bend in the elbow will allow her to kind of shock absorb if she goes over bumps. When you get into adult fit, a lot of adults, when we're on our bikes, we're not sitting on the saddle and reaching the ground with the balls of both feet at the same time. Maybe some people on their town cruiser bikes are, but generally we're sitting a little bit higher. And so when we've designed these bikes with this fit in mind, this is to build the child's confidence so they can catch themselves and stop easily. And so we've designed the way the drivetrain fits them with that in mind also. Okay, very good job.
And so at what age can a young rider manage these gears? Obviously, like 3 or 4 years old, manage the gears and the little brakes and all that?
So our
typically?
smaller bikes are single speeds, and the first bike that we have with gears is a 20-inch wheel. We'll see, depending on their size, a 4 or a 5-year-old get onto one of our, we call it the Ben. So they'll get onto our Ben 20 small. And we have set it up as what they call a 1-by. So that means there's a single front chain ring, and then we've got 7 speeds in the back of that bike. That eliminates duplicate gear ratios, an extra derailleur, and all the hardware that goes with that to keep the bike light. And that way the child only has 1 gear to shift. We'll often see 4 and 5-year-olds, maybe not quite ready, maybe a little curious. You'll put it in a middle gear. They might be ready for it the next year. I mean, kids are all so different.
Absolutely.
But definitely a little verbal coaching goes a long way.
I think that's a lot of it. I know with Annika and Magdalena, just the riding with them and saying, you know, what gear are you in? What gear should you be in? You're right, just kind of prompting them. And they quickly figured it all out. They
Definitely.
were not as young as you're talking about, too, but still, that you're right, just riding with them and prompting them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think off-the-bike training goes a long way also. So we, for example, we have a way of demonstrating the brakes in the showroom for the child that's graduating from a knock and is no longer going to have a coaster brake. We will show the child while standing next to the bike that when you backpedal, nothing happens, all the braking is up here, and that you always want to use both at the same time, and then we'll demonstrate while walking along the bike.
I remember that because she went through that.
And then we'll have the child, while walking next to the bike, demonstrate it back. And that way, when they're actually riding and you say, remember the squeeze and stop, they've got some lesson to go with it. Thank you again.
So certainly we had Sergeant McDonald talking about bike safety, but what kind of things would you encourage parents or whoever's coaching the child to incorporate into the safety features that you, like you said, the braking,
Sure.
to the training?
I think the number one thing is to keep it fun and encouraging, and to talk about, I think it's okay to talk about serious consequences. You know, this is what happens when you ride in the bike lane close to a parked car. A door could open and you could get hurt. So let's just always keep that in mind. And so doing those little verbal training ahead of time. And I think also encouraging, so you and your child are riding and you see that the child is deliberately staying in the good part of the bike lane, to then say, great job, Annika, you're really in the right part of the bike lane, way to go. I just see over and over again in our showroom and my interactions with kids that the littlest bit of encouragement just has great effect.
So reinforce the positive.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what about clothing? Sometimes, certainly we can outfit the smallest children with the whole kit practically.
Sure.
But it's really not necessary. What kind of practical clothing would you recommend?
I think shoes are one of the most important things to consider. Sandals, flip-flops, slip-off shoes are just kind of a disaster waiting to happen. I also see a lot of kids with big rain mud boots, and they're clumsy and awkward, but I think they're also a little dangerous because they can slip. So, you know, just a pair of good old-fashioned sneakers
Yeah, with a good firm
with
sole.
with a nice rubberized sole. I think that's a good way to go. You want to make sure those laces are double knotted or have a Velcro closure. And then drawstrings are something to be aware of. You have a hoodie tied around your waist that could get caught in the drivetrain and cause problems. If you've got strings coming out and one has a loop at the end, that could catch on something and cause a problem. So just looking at clothes in that way.
Yeah.
And then very important is how to wear a skirt on a bike. I don't think that we should avoid wearing skirts on bikes. It's just knowing how to do it. And so if you have the skirt looped over the back of the saddle, that makes getting off and putting a foot down clumsy. And it also actually could endanger the skirt if it's
Yeah.
rubbing on the wheel. And so to sit on the skirt
Yes. Good,
is a good
advice.
method.
You're right. You're right. I think you're right. We need to look at some of the fashion trends with all the, I don't know, all the fringes that could not be good for bicycling. So think about what clothing you're wearing and how that's going to work out. So last month we had an adult talking about cyclocross, and I know that some riders use, a lot of kids do cyclocross. And are you finding that that's true, that Isla bikes are being used for
Oh,
cyclocross?
definitely. I had the privilege of organizing several of the kids' cross races this past fall as part of the Cross Crusade. This is free for the kids, and we have kids from age 2 on balance bikes out there doing cross, right up to 7 and 8-year-olds who are chomping at the bit to go join the juniors, which OBRA just lowered the junior race. So now the 8-year-olds can be in the junior race on the adult track. But we'll set up a track, and these kids have so much heart. As part of the thank you from Cross Crusade, they offered Isla Bikes crew free races in the adult races.
Oh, nice.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. Oh, it's too scary. Oh, I might get hurt. My bike will get dirty. And then I went to the first one, and I saw these kids, and they're in the rain and the mud, and they're having to get off the bike and pick it up over barriers, and they're falling and crying and getting back on and keep going. And I saw one race, and I was sold. So I'm now a cyclocross racer.
Of course you are. Well, and I think, again, the Isla bikes tend to be lighter, so the idea of having to pick up your bike, that would be a lot better for a kid.
It was so neat seeing families out there
Exactly.
doing a healthy activity
Yeah.
where everybody can play at some level. And then, you know, the kids are having fun. They're getting little wooden medals, finisher medals. And then when they go out to cheer for their dad or their mom or both,
Yeah.
it's like they get it more.
Yeah.
And this is the family sport. This is the family activity that they go do on Sunday.
Right.
You know, it's not video games and junk food. So.
It is. It's a very fun family activity, and it's a great place to spend a day. Each of you doing your race. And just kind of briefly, what are some of your teaching experiences in the showroom with some of these kids? You kind of touched on some of them, but
Well, I would repeat again that teaching a child to bike is just one of life's greatest pleasures. And you might remember it and the child might not, but it is a skill that they'll have for life. And the way that we teach in the showroom and when we go to events is that instead of, there's kind of this old-fashioned idea of holding the bike and running along. And instead, we hold the child. And so this is, number one, good for my back. I'm higher up. But also, it reassures the child that you're there, that you're holding them. They're not going to fall. And you can steer them, and then you can start feeling when you can let go for little moments that become big moments, and then they're gone.
that does sound, yeah. Well, I let my husband do the holding the bike in behind our kids. And Sunday Parkways is another family activity. Just really briefly, have you been to Sunday Parkways?
Oh, tons. I hate to miss one. I would recommend Sunday Parkways for anybody on any mode of transport. You can bring your skateboard out there, or skates, bikes, anything you want, and it's like a modern day block party that goes for 5 miles, and it's just a gas. Definitely recommend it.
Talk about a great family activity.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thank you, Maria, for joining us on Psychology Today, and thank you to Annika for helping her demonstrate bike fitting. And thank you for watching our Psychology Today show. I hope that you've gotten some information that you can use from our show about bicycle safety from a police officer, and also about bike fitting from Maria. And while some of it does pertain specifically to children, certainly it gives you some ideas as an adult of how a bike should fit and how you should be comfortable on your bike. So if you're looking for some riding to do, please go to pwtc.com, and there's a lot of bike rides listed, and some of them are group rides. Please come out and ride. And thank you for watching our show. Northwest Bicycle Safety Council is getting ready to place helmets on heads in the year 2017. So we hope to see you out in the area. And if you need a helmet, certainly go to one of the bike fairs. And we'll be having rides all year. I know I've got some rides coming up even in the winter. So please come and ride with us and learn more about safe cycling. Thank you for joining us.